Hello, hello. How are you all? Agnes, Lillian, Ariane, Samantha. Good to see you all. How is everyone feeling today? See some hand claps, some hearts. Love it. Love it.
Mm.
We'll give it a couple minutes for all of our lovely EAs to come in. How are you guys today? Scale of 1 to 10, making it easy. We are November 12 now. We got like just a little over a month left of the year. How are you guys feeling? And it says 5.7. That is so specific. I love it. Nat's an 8. Arian says 5. It's a long day. Okay. Yeah. If you're coming to the end of your day here, I'm hoping I can round off your day with some fun energy here. Samantha says 5. Family's not well. I'm sorry to hear that. Hope everything is okay. Typhoon hit and we don't have good Wi-Fi. Yeah, I've been hearing that a lot. I know that's been impacting a lot of our EAs, a lot of the team members on our team as well. Right? So unfortunate to hear that, and hoping that those of you guys are impacted by it are safe, your family's safe, you're healthy. It's all important, right? It's so interesting because it's when things like this happen, it's like it's tough. I get how difficult it is, right? On one hand, you're you're trying the best to show up the best you can in your role, while at the same time your nervous system is in like actual fight or flight. Like this is actual survival here, right? This isn't um the mental fight or flight that we experience in our role. Right, like that's very normal as well, right? To be in that fight or flight, the overwhelm, the constant go, go, go in in our work, right? And that also triggers a little bit of that fight or flight in our nervous system as well, right? And there's an opportunity to create space for that to make sure you're regulated. But for those of you that are impacted by things like a typhoon, earthquakes, any natural disasters or anything like that, then like now your body physically, you are in fight or fight, right? Which just means, right, that you guys get to be even more intentional with creating that level of regulation for yourself, right? So for those of you guys that have attended the leadership labs that I ran a few months ago, right? You guys know how much I talk about this, right? The importance of making sure we are regulating our nervous system. This is the piece that many of us don't um I don't want to say don't focus on, but tend to forget that it has such a tremendous impact on how we show up in our day to day, how we show up as EAs, how we show up as human beings, right? Our nervous system is like that invisible kind of driver, right? That's directing the vehicle called our body, right? The vehicle called our mind. Right. And so when our nervous system is in that state of fight or flight, whether it's from a perceived fear of, deadlines you're going to miss, mistakes you might have made, right? Or actual fear, right? For those of you impacted by the typhoon, right? You're in that actual physical survival mode now, right? And so it's even more important you are creating that space, that time, and being intentional with checking in with your body, checking in with your nervous system, right? What can I be doing to regulate myself, right? Because not only are you um, responsible for showing up as the EA and the leaders you are in your work, but I imagine many of you are also responsible for showing up as leaders in your life as well, right? Leading your family, leading your community, right? Protecting and taking care of and supporting, right? And so it's so much more important that during times like this, when you guys are impacted by external circumstances that create that level of reactivity and danger and overwhelm and stress. All right, that you guys are just being very intentional with making sure you regulate yourself. Right, we can only show up as powerfully as we are regulated. Right, and if you guys don't know how to regulate, right, I definitely recommend checking out the workshops that I did in the Leadership Lab. If you don't know where to find that, just definitely reach out to Nat. Nat can definitely guide you there. Right, we have the recordings for all those calls. Right, I dive into a lot of very practical ways that we can learn to regulate our nervous system so that we can show up more powerfully. Okay, so let's dive into today's session here, right? We have another important session around strategic planning, right? I want to make sure that we are equipping all of you guys with the tools, with the know-hows, to essentially become really great strategic partners to your executives, because I imagine that's why all of you guys are here, right? I imagine all of you are here not because you're in, you want a role where you can just manage inboxes and project manage tasks, right? I imagine all of you aspire to and are constantly working on ways where you can level up the way you show up in your role, right? To start to come, go from being a good EA to being a great EA. Maybe some of you are in that stage of going from being a great EA into being, even more, right? An ops manager, a chief of staff, whatever it is, regardless of the role you're stepping into, one of the key requirements here, right, is your ability to be more of a strategic partner. And I want to dive into what that actually means in today's call, right? What that actually looks like, what that feels like, and some of the tactical things that you can do there, right? And of course, I want to create space for you guys if you have any questions around that, any specific questions, challenges, issues that is coming up in your day-to-day role here, right? In terms of how you get to become and transform and shift to being more of that strategic partner, right? Um, Let me start with just checking in. I know 2 weeks ago we ran the first part of this workshop, right, which is to kind of dive into the high level of what strategic planning looks like, right? What are the different components that you would need to create clarity around and help your executive extract? And I'm going to dive more into that today, right? But I want to take a moment to pause and just take a step back here, and I want us to just reflect on this question of what does it actually mean to be a strategic partner, right? Atlas throws this term around a lot. You guys are hearing it a lot from me and in the training that you guys do. What does that actually mean? What does it mean to be a strategic partner, right? And how? How do I show up more as a strategic partner? And not just show up as a strategic partner, but how do I show up in a way where my executive feels that? My executive feels that I am being a strategic partner to them, right? Control your executive. To an extent, you are correct. Right? To an extent, yes. There is, a part of what it means there. The dictator, I love that. Right? There's this concept of managing up, right? That you guys will have to learn to how to be skillful at, right? Especially for those of you that work with a lot of tougher executives. When I say tougher, the ones that are a little more controlling, the ones that like things to be a specific way, right? Maybe those that tend to I want to say overmanage, right? Either overmanage, micromanage, right? Those that tend to struggle with letting go of control, right? I know I struggle with that too, right? And Lamia has to deal with it, right? And yes, you are going to deal with different type of executives in your career path, right? Maybe you stick with your current executive for a really long time. Maybe you get promoted to work with other executives, right? Maybe you get promoted to work with a team of executives, right? And you're going to notice that every executive comes with their own dynamics, their own style of leadership, right? And then your opportunity is to practice. And I think I shared this before, right? It's called situational leadership. It's learning to adapt to the different situation, adapt to the different types of leadership that you're going to experience, right? If you work in a team with multiple executives, right? For those of you on the Atlas team, we have multiple executives in the company, and while one of you may be a specific EA to a specific executive, you will still have to work cross department, which means another executive has a different style from the executive you're supporting, right? And so it's learning to have that situational leadership. And the better you guys get at this, the better you become, that you progress in your career here, right? So what else? I want to leave that reflection question for you guys. What does it mean to be a strategic partner to your executive? Because I can go on and share with you the tactical side, I can share with you the hows and everything, but if you don't know what it actually means to be one, right, none of that will actually matter. Right? And so we want to start there with clarity and alignment on what does that actually mean to be one. Then you can step into the embodiment of it, and then you can do the implementation of it. Right? And that's typically the three-step approach into becoming whoever, whatever it is you want to become. First, you have to understand what it actually means, what success looks like, right? And then you want to embody that identity, whatever that identity is. I want to be a strategic partner. I want to embody the identity of being a strategic partner. I want to be a chief of staff. I need to embody the identity of being a chief of staff. You embody that identity first, right? Then you can go and implement the system, the process, the things, the doing, right? You can't until you've really stepped and understand what it means to be and embody that role, you're not going to be able to, right? If you're still being just an EA or just a VA trying to do the work of an EA or a chief of staff, it's going to be challenging because each identity there requires a different level of thinking, requires a different level of approaching problems, requires a different level of making decisions. And so the first step is to be that identity first. So, yeah, what does it mean for you to be a strategic partner? Ariane says here, keeping them accountable for the short and long-term goals, being organized, measuring the success for them. Amazing. I love that. All right. Very on point there. Right. And the key piece I want to hone into there is the accountable. Right. The being organized, the measuring, that's easy. You just create the system for that. Right. Create the system, roll out the process, the organization, the measuring, that's easy. The hard part about being the strategic partner is that first term there that you used is the accountability. So how do you hold them accountable? Because that's what a strategic partner does to anyone, right? Is they hold them accountable to what it is that they want to be achieving, to who it is that they want to become, the leader that they want to become, right? So I'll speak more into that. Nat says get to know your exec really well, get to understand the company really well, stay ahead and proactively manage up. Yeah, yeah, right. You can't be a strategic partner if you don't have the context to be one. Right? You need to understand and know the context, which means you need to understand your executive well enough to be that partner. You need to understand the company well enough to be able to guide and help and support your executive in making the decisions that they need to be making, right? And then staying ahead, excuse me, staying ahead and proactively managing up, right? Or as A put it, control your executive. Right. Um, yeah. So I want to share a little bit more and I know we can dive into the hows here, right? Let me break this down simply. You can be a good EA, you can be a better EA, you can be the best EA out there, right? So when it comes to being a strategic partner, doing things like this today, we're talking about strategic planning, right? Well, let's use this context. In the context of helping your executive with strategic planning. That's something that they need to do. That's their responsibility, right? Our goal as EAs, right, is to help our executives fulfill on their responsibilities, whatever their responsibilities are. Maybe that's working on the right things in the business. Maybe that's being a better leader. Maybe that's creating more organizational structure, right? Maybe that's getting the team to operate better. Whatever your executives' responsibilities are, our job is to make it easier for them to be able to do that and to keep them, as Ariane put it, accountable to that, right? Now, there's different ways you can do that. A good EA will remind them to do it. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. Have you done that yet? Right? We're end of the year now. Have you done strategic planning yet? You should probably do that, right? Get your goals together, get your objectives together, go communicate that to the team. A good EA will remind them. A better EA will make it easier for them, right? You guys see the difference? Slight nuance here. You can remind them, hey, executive, you don't have your goals yet. You should probably work on those. Versus, hey, executive, you haven't worked on your goals yet. We need clarity on that so that you can, provide proper alignment, clarity, direction for your team. Here's how I'm going to help you do it. XYZ. That's better. More of a strategic partner. You make it easier for them, right? Because you understand they're busy. They're focused on the immediate thing right now, firefighting, stuck in the day-to-day operations, right? They don't have the time. You recognize that, but you know it's important that they need to do it because it's their responsibility, right? And so you go and you make it easier. Hey, I'm going to carve out time on your calendar to do this. Here's what you need to do. You do this part, I'll do the rest for you. And we can review it together. 10, 80, 10. Right? If you guys remember, I shared this before. The 10, 80, 10 partnerships model, right? You make it easy for them to focus on their 10%, which is they provide the context that you need to go and do the 80%. This is effective delegation. And then you bring it back and you review together with them for that final 10% to get that sign off and to move on to the next step. That's what a better EA would do. Now, my question for you guys. What would the best EA in the world do? You're just like, wait, what? There's another level? That better level sounds pretty good already. What's the best? Anyone? That says I'm stumped. Be proactive, draft the 2026 goals, refine them together. Yeah, that's the better. That's part of the make it easier. Make it easier, help them do it. Make sure it gets done. That's the better. There's another layer. There's one more layer here. That you guys do this well, and I promise you, it's going to set you apart from every other EA out there and all the EAs that didn't make it to this call and didn't watch the recording. All right. Hopefully that motivates you guys to not miss these calls. So the best EA, you want to really set yourself apart. You want to become great at being an EA, even better, like step into like chief of staff mode here, is you help them shift. You help them shift into becoming the leader they need to be so they can do that thing the best, right? If it's strategic planning, you help them shift into being, right, the visionary they need to be in order to make strategic planning easier, better, more effective, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, right? You become the steward of their transformation. Because here's the reality. Most of your executives are busy. They are in reactive mode. They are in day-to-day firefighting mode, right? How many guys relate? Whose executive is that right now? Right? Whose executive is in in that mode where they're just stuck in the work, right? They got fires they got to put out, they got things they need to do. They know strategic planning is important. They need to go do this thing, but they're also stuck doing all these other things right now, right? Operating mode versus visionary mode requires two different levels of consciousness, requires two different levels of thinking. Most executives will not remember to shift from operating mode to visionary thinking mode when they do strategic planning. I know I am an executive. I've worked with a lot of executives. Trust me. Right? Many of them are stuck in their day to day and then they go do strategic planning from the level of consciousness of operating and being stuck in the day to day. Now, this is a problem. Why? Because when they're in the day to day, when they're in operating mode, they're in fight or flight mode. Remember earlier in this call, I talked about your nervous system being dysregulated. Their nervous system is dysregulated, right? And it's not a bad thing. You kind of need to be. If your house is on fire, you need to be in fight or flight mode to go put the fire out, right? To go do the things to save the people and put out the fire, right? And minimize the damage and everything. And it's normal for the executive to be in that fight or flight mode, right? However, to do strategic planning, which is to take a step back, to look at the bigger picture of all this, to get clear on what's our vision, what's our mission, where is it that we need to land? How do I think through each of these problems? How do I think through, where we're currently at, where it is we want to go, and how to bridge that? You can't do that when you're in firefighting mode. Because when you're in firefighting mode, you're just focused on the thing right in front of you, which is the house is on fire. You can't take a step back and assess the situation and be like, okay, how did this fire started? Right? What needs to be done so this fire never happens again? Right? What do I need to do after this fire is gone? How do I rebuild the infrastructure so that this fire, it doesn't, the house doesn't set on fire again? Right? These are take a step back type of questions. This is take a step back mode. This isn't the thinking that you have when you're inside of the house and everything's on fire, right? The ceiling's starting to fall down, right? You're not going to sit around and look around the fire and be like, how did this happen? Right? You're in fight or flight mode. And hopefully that analogy makes sense for you guys because you want to, as Nat mentioned earlier, you want to understand your exec, get to know your exec really well, which means you need to understand the state that they're in when they're making decisions, right? And if they're in that fight or flight mode, they're not going to be effective at strategic planning. And so to be the best in the world at being a strategic partner, you want to help them shift out of that, right? You want to help them create some space, create some time, disconnect from the fire so that they can sit and deeply think and step into visionary mode, right? All your executives have two modes there, operator mode, visionary mode. They will bounce back and forth when they remember to. They don't remember to, they don't have the space to do it, they don't have the reminder to, then they're gonna stay in operator mode and they're gonna do strategic planning from operator mode. And that's not gonna be effective, right? And so now that you guys know this, if you go and create that space and be that steward for their transformation there, that sets you apart from every other EA out there, because most EAs out there may make it to good, may not even make it to better. Yeah, Nat?
Yeah, this just reminded me when I was working with Renata as her EA, and then she would occasionally get really twirly and nervous and all agitated, and then she would get like this, and I would get like this. And then it would like be this horrible miscommunication. And one time we had this call and it was really good call. And she said, I know I get all twirly and agitated, but if you then follow, then we're both stuck. So when I get like this, can you stay grounded and help me come back? And true enough, whenever I was successful in grounding myself and just letting this um, state of um, calm prevail, she would get back and we would, move forward with whatever we were stuck.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very beautiful and very clear example of what it means, right, to be the best EA and strategic partner out there by helping your executive shift from that dysregulated state to a more regulated, grounded state where they can show up their best, right? And what Nat's speaking to here, right, the phenomenon behind this is called co-regulation. All right, and I spoke about this in the leadership lab as well, right? Our nervous systems have the ability to help other nervous systems regulate. When we are grounded, a dysregulated nervous system looks at that, and there's something called mirror neurons, right? Where our brain's neurons looks and sees another, right, set of nervous system and goes, oh, okay, let me mirror that. Right? And that's why you see when in a situation when one person panics and then the other person doesn't stay grounded, they start to panic too, and they don't know why they're panicking. Maybe you or that person and have been there, right? However, do you notice in a situation where a bunch of people are panicking, one person steps into leadership and is grounded, then everyone else's nervous system goes, oh. Someone is leading here and they're grounded means we're not in as much danger as we think we're in. Then our nervous system mirrors that grounded nervous system. That's called co-regulation, right? And we get to do this with our executives. When they are dysregulated, overwhelmed, all over the place, right? We stay grounded. We offer a grounded nervous system so that their nervous system mirrors that. This is what the best and the best strategic partners do, right? Or EAs or chief of staffs do, right? And so I'll reiterate that again. The opportunity here to go from good to best, right, is yes, you have the process, yes, you have the systems, and we're going to train you guys, we're going to teach you guys, we're going to provide all of that for you guys. And you can do that. I mean, you can stop there, or you can aim to be the best. And you do that through your own level of leadership by understanding how you can help your executive step into better leadership, right? And the immediate thing that you can do there is you can provide the groundedness, right? And you can be that steward, right? And on the technical side, right, is you can create the space for that. If you know that we're coming to the end of the year, your executive has not created their strategic plan yet, they're not clear on what their goals are for 2026 yet, they're not clear on what the Q1 plan is for the next quarter yet, you have an opportunity to help them. Now, you don't want to just throw everything at them and be like, hey, you need to do this, blah, 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 XYZ. You can just do that. And you can be like, hey, strategic plan is important. Here's why. And I know this is important that you want to be doing this. I'm going to create some space for you. I'm going to time block some time in your calendar, right? Let's make sure that you're, regulated to make sure you have some space to rest, recharge before then, so that when you're doing your strategic planning, that you are able to do it from being a visionary, right? Being grounded, being able to take a step back and really think through the biggest problems and the things that you want to be, the goals you want to be setting, the direction you want to be setting for the rest of the team, right? Step into that mode, and again, it sets you apart. And your executive will see that, will notice that, will experience that. They will feel that from you. They will feel that you're being way more than just a task doer, a project manager, right? So you guys see the distinction? Good, better, best, right? Good. Let me go remind them to do it, but I don't help them do it. They just need to do it on their own, right? Better, let me help them do it. Let me make it super easy from them using the 10-80-10 method, right? And we have playbooks for you guys. I'll walk you through and give you guys the step by steps, right, on how to implement, each of these different things. Today it's going to be strategic planning. Next time we're going to dive into other things. If we go into New Year, there's going to be more. There's a lot more different frameworks and things that we're going to provide you to go and implement for your executive and for your executive's company, right? But most importantly, what sets you out from being better and being the best is really noticing the state that your executive is showing up in and how you can help them shift from being the firefighter, stepping into that visionary mode, even if it's just for one day, for one full day of being a full visionary, so they can set the plan, and then after that, if they need to jump back into the house of fire, they can do that. Before that day, they need to be in visionary mode. I'm going to pause. Any questions around this? Is this all landing and making sense for all of you? You guys can just share in the comments so I can see. All right, Agnes says yes, Nina says yes, Samantha says yes. Amazing. Amazing. Yes, from Marianne. Okay. All right. And I encourage you to sit and reflect with what's one thing you can do this next week. What's one thing you can do this next week? If, and I say if, I'm not going to force anyone to be the best EA in the world. That is a decision and a choice you get to make. Right? If you choose and you want to claim, I want to be the best EA, I want to be, aspiring to become a chief of staff, an ops manager, whatever role it is you're desiring, you have to claim that identity yourself and you have to embody that identity. I can't force you to do that. But if you choose yes, then my encouragement is to reflect on, okay, if I'm embodying this identity now, right? What's the one thing I can do this week to move myself closer to that identity? What's one thing I can do this week with my executive to help them create the space, right? To help them shift and transform from firefighting mode to visionary mode so that they can fulfill on their responsibility of creating clarity around the strategic plan. Okay, I'm going to move on from there. All right, I want to dive into the strategic planning framework to make sure you guys understand how that works and to understand your role and how you can help your executive create that strategic plan. All right, and we're going to give you guys this playbook here. That's going to make it a lot easier for all of you. All right, and so how these playbooks will work, all right, and you guys are going to start to get access to more and more of these playbooks, all right? If you're a new EA, great. This will be a great way to really start off your relationship really powerfully. If you've been an existing EA for a while now, opportunity to upgrade and level up, right? How you get to show up. And so how these strategic planning playbooks work is they're going to be built around the 10-80-10 partnership model, right? So 10% is what you need to get your executive to contribute so that you have the vision, the context, right, and the direction needed so you can do your 80% of the work there, right? And that's extracting the context, that's building the systems, the processes, that's doing the implementation, all right? And then you bring it back to your executive for the final 10% to review together, to refine together, to make any key decisions together, so you can move on to the next thing. All right, and so each of these playbooks will provide you both the executive's roadmap as well as the EA roadmap. Executive roadmap is what your executive needs to do, right? We combine the playbooks. Originally, the intention was to split it and have two separate playbooks, one for executive, one for EAs. But then I also realized that adds too much complexity, right, for all of you guys, and I want to make this, I want to make it easy for you to make it easy for your executive, right? And so we're combining the playbooks, but we are going to provide very clear instructions on what your your exec needs to focus on, and then what you need to focus on, and we keep it all in one place, right? For now, it's going to live in these Google Docs just for simplicity of it, right? Our future plan is to, to get this all into, a very, beautiful web app so that it's more interactive and easier for both you and your executive to navigate through that, right? Yeah. And so each of the playbooks you go into, you'll have the overview tab, which will show here's what your executive needs to do, right? First is they need to, read this tab to understand the framework. Then they focus on this tab, which is the executive 10%, and that's it, right? And then the together 10%, technically they don't need to do anything there. You can bring that to them. So really they're just focusing on these two key things, right? And so that minimizes what they need to do because we want to make it easy for them. All right. If your executive is super, super busy, they don't have time to go through these. You can summarize it in whatever way makes the most sense for your executive, right? You guys should know by now what way makes the most sense for executive. Maybe they like quick Loom videos. Maybe they like voice notes. Maybe they like, a quick brief written summary, right? Whatever format is going to be helpful for them. For those that are like curious and want to dive more into it, then you can give them or link to the playbook, the specific sections of the playbook, so that they can dive more into it and understand, each of these frameworks and components of the EMS, all right, the executive management system, so they understand what they need to contribute. All right. And then your roadmap is to then, one, understand the framework yourself. All right. So you know what you are implementing here, and then to focus on your 80%. Right. And then your 80% here, we've broken it down into a very clear step-by-step process. All right. And I've given you a quick cheat sheet here as well. So you have something to, pull up and implement. All right. A nice little checklist for you. All right. So you can go through and make sure that you didn't miss anything. All right. And then so each playbook will have some sort of framework. All right. This is a little quick reading that you can go through to understand the framework. All right. And so I'm going to share some of this today, and then we'll dive into some of the what the implementation looks like. And then any questions you guys have, let me know. So when it comes to strategic planning, the goal here, the outcome here, right, is to help your executive take their vision and turn that into focused weekly execution, right? Because a vision alone without execution is just a dream, right? And so we want to take that vision, we want to build a system around it to create momentum through a clear weekly execution. And then you want to, as Ariane shared, hold them accountable, have a system to hold them accountable to that, right? And so I think I mentioned this in the previous workshop that your executive might have an existing framework for how they set goals already. If they do and they want to stick with their framework, take what you learn here and adapt. Take the same principles and just adapt it to their framework. If they don't have a framework, well, good news for you. Now you get to bring them a framework and you'll just look way more amazing, right, in your role, right? And that's our goal. Our goal is to make you guys look amazing in your roles, right? We want to turn you guys into the best EAs in the world here. All right. And so we're giving you typically these are things that most EAs out there will not learn and do not learn. Right. Many EAs out there, most EAs out there just stick to the foundational things, which are inbox, calendar management, task management. Right. We want to make you guys the best. So we're giving you guys the inside scoop on how to be the best, right? By thinking more like a chief of staff and operating more like a chief of staff versus just being an EA. So the framework we share here, right, follows a 3 by 3 by 6, right? And so North Star goals, which is annual goals, right? However, you guys might use different terminologies in your companies, right? But the idea here is there needs to be a set of annual goals. What is the company achieving this next year, right? My recommendation, no more than three. They have more than three, it's not going to be focused. Their attention, their energy, their time is spread too thin. So very clearly, what are three goals for the year? All right, and these are the big bets that moves the company more towards their mission than their vision. Right. And if that is not defined yet for your company, there's a separate playbook for that called the North Star playbook. All right. And I encourage taking some time to work with your executive to extract what you need from them to create the vision, the mission, the values, and the strategy, right? Which are all the North Stars. Right. Once you have the North Star component, it makes strategic planning easier because there's a North Star, there's a guiding point, right, that they're making decisions based off of. And so you want to encourage your executive to get clear on what their three annual goals are. And based on those three annual goals, you want to break it down into three quarterly objectives, right? What are the three top priorities that the company is going to be focusing on in Q1, so January, February, March, right? That's going to move the needle towards the goals, right? Everything always cascades up back to the North Star. All right, we take the North Star, we break it down, and everything needs to cascade back up, right? So you have the annual goals. You have the quarterly objectives, right? Some companies might use different terms like OKRs, right? And then, again, whatever framework the company's using, just follow that, right? If there's no existing framework, you get to bring this to them, right? If you follow theirs, just adapt it. It's the same principle, right? There needs to be an annual layer, and then there's a quarterly layer. And then the key is now you take the quarterly layer, so you know what your top three priorities are for your executive and for the company, right? And you go and you create a weekly execution system for them. We call this the sacred six. Why is it sacred? Because these are the sacred tasks that you want to be protecting time and energy so that your executive can focus on these, right? Because these are the six high priority things each week that moves the needles on the big three objectives, which then leads to achieving the goals. All right, so if all your executive did was just tackled and knocked out their sacred six week over week, all right, they would move the needle on everything else here, right? Then they would fulfill their responsibility of being an executive. They win, you win, right? So yeah, so that's the framework here, 3 by 3 by 6, right? Sometimes it doesn't always have to be three, right? If for some quarters maybe they want to get hyper focused and they only have two objectives or maybe one objectives, that's totally fine too. The key here is this maximum three. Any more than three, focus gets diluted unless they have a big team, right? If you have a big team, you have a big organization, you can take on more, you can do more. Smaller team, keep it hyper focused. So max three goals, three objectives, and then six weekly sacred six. Everything cascades back up to the North Star, right? And everything gets created based on the North Star coming down. Clear for everyone? All right. And so I'm not going to go into the nuances of everything. The playbook is here for you guys to read through to understand, right? What I will dive into is the anatomy of how to create really good goals, right? Is most executives, most companies, they set a goal and then just leave it at the goal, right? And it becomes sometimes it's too vague, sometimes it's not specific enough, right? Then when it's not specific, there's not enough clarity for the team to be able to execute on it. And so we want to take the executive's vision for their goal, right, and break that down into a very clear structure so we can set up both the executive and their team for success, right? And so this is an example of a structure you can use for goals, right? There's the goal statement, right? 5 to 7 words maximum. Example is achieve 10 million ARR, right? Or build world-class customer success, right? Or launch a new growth engine, right? This year, something like that, right? Very short, brief, to the point, very clear, very memorable, very specific. And then you want to have a component of what's the why here, and you want to extract this from your executive. This is important because most goal setting framework miss this component. They don't have the why, and when you don't have the why, the team doesn't connect to the goal. They just do the work because it's what they're told to do. But there's no connection of how do I actually contribute to this goal? Why does this goal even matter to begin with? Right? And so you want to extract these key things from your executive so you can provide that context for the team, right? One of the two sentences here, right, on why. Why does this goal actually matter right now? Why are we prioritizing this and saying no to everything else, right? So once you have the goal, a couple sentences on the why, then you want to help them break it down into 1 to 3 very clear, measurable outcomes, right? While the first one doesn't have to be, it doesn't necessarily need to be measurable. It just needs to be clear on what we're achieving. And then the outcomes breaks it down into what are the actual measurables there, right? How do we know we're successful, all right? And we're gonna, in your 80% tab here, we'll provide you AI prompts and templates to help you create more structure around these goals, right? And then we use the exact same formatting for the objectives as well, right? So for the objectives, what's the objective? What's the why? And then 1 to 3 measurable outcomes, right? Outcomes, not activities, right? Not go do this, right? Or do that, right? Or work on this project. It's a very measurable outcome, right? If there's a measurable metric, success metric to it, we want to tie that to it, right? Okay, so that is goals and objectives. Any questions on that? Is that clear to everyone before I move on to Sacred Six? You have a question, now is the time to ask. I want to make sure you guys are super clear on it before you dive into implementation. I'm gonna take that all good. Okay. All right. I'm gonna assume everyone's clear on that. And there's a tab in here with examples, so you can see some of the examples for each of the goals, the objectives, as well as the Sacred Six. All right, so you can see what it looks, what good a good set of them look like. So you have that reference there. And so once you're clear on the quarterly plan, right, and you know what your executive's top priorities are, right, and this is something we're going to work with all of you guys on, right? We're starting to roll out the process for this where, every quarter, your AMs are going to work with you, right, to make sure that you guys are clear on what your executive's top three priorities are for each quarter, right? Um, yeah, this is important. I want to take a pause and to step back and just kind of dive into this a little bit more here on why this is important. All right. Because it's very easy for an executive and EA partnership to get stuck in the weeds of things, right? Like inbox management, doing this task, working on this project, things like that, right? That we may tend to lose focus on what winning looks like, right? And the thing is, you can do everything else really well. You can manage the inbox really well. You can manage the calendar really well. You can do all those really well. But if your executive is losing, that means you're losing as well, right? If your executive is not winning and not achieving their top priorities, the business goes downhill. And the business goes downhill. Doesn't matter how good your guys' relationship is, right? It's not going to be healthy for your long-term career, right? And we've seen this happen at Atlas, where some clients love their EAs, partnerships going so well, but the client, the executive, doesn't achieve their goals, doesn't, grow the company, right? They get into a tough financial situation, and then while they love their EAs, but they can't afford to keep their EA because they weren't hitting their goals, they weren't hitting their priorities, right? And we don't want that situation to happen for any of you guys, right? And that's why we've been transitioning a bit of our focus to making sure that we can set you guys up as good strategic partners so that you can help them set, what the priorities are, but also create the system to hold them accountable to that so that they can go and achieve those things, right? Because if they're winning, again, they win, you guys win. You guys win, we're winning. All right, so our goal is to make sure everyone's winning here. Win-win-win scenario, right? And so that's why we're spending more time and why I'm encouraging all of you guys to help us out here with this, right? Is don't just get stuck in your day-to-day of being an EA, right? When we roll out these frameworks to you guys, let's be intentional with it. I know you have a lot going on. I know your executive has a lot going on, but we've put in a lot of thought and intention into the things we roll out. We don't just roll out things for the sake of rolling out so we can add more to your plate so you guys can be more overwhelmed, right? No, we're rolling these things out because we know that the things that you guys will implement here are going to create more wins for your clients and your executives, which means more longevity in your guys' career, more growth for you and your role, right? And then we keep the relationship healthy, then Atlas gets to keep the relationship as well, right? So I share that to emphasize the importance of when we roll these things out, please create time and energy to do these things. And if you guys get stuck anywhere, let us know, right? Reach out to your AM, reach out to your team, our team. All right, let them know, hey, I'm trying to roll this out, but I'm struggling right now. My executive is too busy, whatever it is, or I'm too busy, right? Whatever it is that's keeping you from implementing these things, right? Because if you don't bring that up, we're not going to be able to help you. And then what ends up happening is we create a losing relationship, and then we don't find out until the house is on fire. right? Let us know when there's a bit of that spark, a little bit of smoke coming up. Let us know so we can put that out or help you put that out. So it doesn't become a house of fire. And then you guys come to us when it's a house of fire. And then there's only so much we can do at that moment, right? We'll do our best still to help save the relationship, to help, put out the fires. But at that point, if it's a raging fire already, there's only so much we can do, right? And so create that feedback loop, right? Be intentional with these. Okay, Sacred Six. This is important. This is a new thing. We haven't done this historically, and it's critical, right? Sacred Six is where you take the vision and you create an execution system around that, right? So again, the six I think is pretty straightforward. It's the six top most important tasks that your executive needs to be working on in order to achieve their big three. We want to create a system to help extract that from them every single week and then to manage them around that, which means protecting their time and energy around that, right? We call it sacred for a reason, right? Because if they don't do these, they're going to lose, right? And I can't emphasize enough, they lose. Who loses? You guys. You guys lose. Who loses? Us, right? So they're sacred. And so what I recommend here, and we have a whole process here that breaks down how to implement each of these, right? The North Star, the big three, as well as the Sacred Six, right? What I recommend is creating a weekly planning ritual with your executive. All right. How many of you guys are doing one-on-ones with your executives right now? Weekly? Let me know. Drop a yes or a no in the chat. Ariane? Yeah. Is that a question or is that a yes? Yes, I take it as a yes. Okay. Ariane says we have two. Oh, amazing. Okay. Yeah. Yes per week. Awesome. Yeah. All of you guys want to be aiming for having some sort of cadence with your executive weekly. All right. Yeah. Lamia and I, we do weekly and we do daily as well. All right. And so, she really holds me on a tight leash here when it comes to accountability. Right. And so you want to have some sort of weekly planning ritual. And this doesn't need to be additional to your one-on-one. You can use your one-on-ones for this. Right. You don't want to, I know many of you don't want to add more calls to your executive's calendar. And so you can find creative and strategic ways to add this in, right? And so my recommendation is using your one-on-ones for this, right? And baking it into your one-on-ones with them. If that doesn't make sense for your guys' relationship, then at least having some sort of weekly planning ritual where end of the week you reflect on, hey, executive, did you complete your Sacred Six? How many of them? Six of them? Great, amazing, crushing it. Five? Okay, that's still good. That's still good. 80% is still good. Less than three? Oh, what's going on here? What happened? What got in the way? Right? What got in the way? How can I help you? You know, I pull up his telegrams. I love that. Right? That communication is important. The communication cadence is really important there. All right. So if they're not achieving their weekly sacred six, if it's like they're only doing one or two or none of it, then we have a problem. This is smoke. This is the smoke I'm talking about. Then this is where you guys get to problem solve and be that strategic partner to help them ideate, okay, well, something's not working here. How do we change the system? How do we change the rhythm here so that you can focus on the most important thing you should be focusing on as an executive? And if you guys can't figure out what that is, hit up your AM. Hey, AM, I'm implementing the Sacred Six. My executive is not hitting their Sacred Six. I need help. I need help. What do I do? How do I get them back on track here? Right? But you want to have a weekly ritual where you're reflecting on that and then planning for the next one. So great, you hit your sacred six this week, crushing it. All right, what's your next six one? Right? Here's what I think it is. I did a little bit of, based on your progress right now and based on your big three, this is what I think that you should be working on next week. Does that align with you? Right? Yes, great, amazing. I'm gonna time block this in your calendar for you. In fact, I've already done it. It's in your calendar already. It's time blocked, right? And so your sacred time to work on these tasks is in the calendar. You don't need to worry about it. You just need to show up and commit to doing it, right? If anything gets in the way, any fires comes up, let me know. I can work around it, but we're going to do our best to protect the sacred six time as much as we can because these are your most important priorities that you need to achieve, that you need to do to achieve your big three and your goals, right? If we have to pivot, we can pivot as needed, but we're going to do our best to protect this time. And that's part of the weekly planning that you guys just do. Review the sacred six, set the next one up, time block into your calendar, their calendar, and you protect the shit out of it. Right? Other meetings, team members come up and they go, "Hey, I need a meeting with Colin." All right, and Lamia does an amazing job at this. And she'd be like, "No, you guys can do it next the following week. Doesn't seem that important." Right? If it is something that is important, super urgent, then okay, then we will work around that. Right? But this is strategic partnership. Right? This is where you get to be that strategic partnership and you manage up, or as A puts it, you control. Right? In the most loving and challenging way as possible. Right? And you hold them accountable to that. And it's that simple, right? And then there's other things you can do here and how you manage and keep that going, right? Monday mornings, maybe you send them a quick reminder in the start of day. Hey, reminder, these are your sacred six this week. It's already in your calendar, right? I've already cleared any obstacles there for you, right? You just need to focus on the first one. Here's the context for your first task, right? Each start of SOD, I will give you context for whatever the next task is, so you can focus on that, right? And daily, you protect that time and you hold them accountable to it, whatever support they need. Maybe you decide, hey, you know what? This thing, I can't do it right now. Maybe someone else on the team can do it. You go and you help them delegate that. All right, okay, great. Can I get the context from you? What does done look like? Right? What are you expecting from this? What is the output? Give me the context and I'll go and help you delegate that to whoever you need to delegate it to. Right? And make sure that I bring that back to you when it is done. All right, you do that daily, and then Friday, rinse and repeat. Weekly planning again. What was done? Great. What wasn't done? Why? What do we need to shift? What do we need to change? What do we need to improve? And let's plan next week. And you just keep repeating that week over week, and you create a momentum and a clear system for execution that aligns with their big three objectives and therefore their goals. All right, and that's it. All right, you guys can go through the playbook. I'm not going to go through everything here. Here's a quick cheat sheet that allows you guys to do this. All right, and so my invitation for you guys is to start this if you haven't already, is to add this into your workflow this week, next week. We're creeping up. The year is going to fly by. We're going to dive into the year, and ideally, your executive should have clarity on their goals and their big threes before they leave for the holiday. So that January 5th comes around and everyone hops back into work. Everyone is just clear on what needs to be done, and you're clear on how you can best support and hold your executive accountable, right? If you need to create that space for them to have more clarity and to shift from operating mode into being visionary mode, you create that for them and you encourage them why. Here's why, right? You're in this day to day right now. I feel like you need a little bit more space so you can step into being a visionary so that you can come up with a very clear plan, right? You can use the exact terminology we use in the playbook. That's why, we created this for you guys. So you have the context and the language to use to share. And when you share that with your executives, you guys just start to look amazing. You start to look like strategic partners to your executives. Okay, I know we have a couple minutes left. I'm going to pause here. Questions? No questions? Does this all make sense? Does this excite you guys? Ariane says this is great. Yes. Okay. Hey, this is our goal. Is to equip you guys with these tools, but also to equip you with a mindset that you need to shift from being good to being the best EAs out there. Very challenged, very inspired, very excited. Great. All those are all very aligned, right? As it should, right? Growth requires challenge. right? If you're looking at this and you're feeling a little bit of, ooh, okay, a little bit of challenge here, that's good. That's healthy. All right. That means the old identity wants to die. The old identity of an okay EA wants to die. The version of being the best EA wants to emerge. And when two identities conflict with each other, that's what creates it's a little bit of challengingness, but this is exciting. I'm up for it and I want to commit to this. All right. And our commitment is to provide the resources to support you guys, to help you guys navigate through this transformation. Right. And so anything you guys are needing, please reach out to your AMs. Please reach out to our teams. Yes, A?
Curious question, Colin. Does the Sacred Six apply to any task management method? Like, does it mess up the execs method or, you know,
Hmm.
straight?
Great question. Yes. So, like I shared earlier, right? If you and your executive has an existing framework already and it's working for you, that's completely fine, right? Take the principles that we're sharing here, right? Maybe you and your exec is like, no, six too much. I'm just gonna do three a week. I'm gonna do sacred three, right? Or maybe it's just one. I'm just gonna do one thing per week. Whatever it is for you and your executive. That's for you and your executive to align on what's the system there. But you take the same principles that we're sharing here is to have a weekly planning ritual and to decide on how many or how you want to manage what their top priorities are and how you hold them accountable. Could be sacred six, could be sacred three, could be sacred one, whatever it is. Adapt to what's going to work best for you and your executive. If they don't have anything existing, great, then you bring our frameworks and you share our frameworks with them. So it doesn't have to be followed to the T, right? Adapt and find what's best. The key thing is I want to give you guys both the mindset and the principles for it. Okay? Yeah, as you mentioned, progress over perfection. You're not going to get it right the first time. It's going to take time, right? It took a few weeks for me and Lamia to get into the rhythm too of testing out this framework, right? And seeing what works for us, right? So choose progress. But progress only happens when you start. So start to take some of these things and start to implement them. And then you revise along the way and you adapt along the way. All right. Okay. Any other questions, guys? I know we're a little over time here, but I'm happy to stick around if you guys have any other questions. If not, do I have all of your commitment to take this, to go check out the playbook, to start implementing this? Yes? I see some thumbs up. I see some reactions. Commitment's key. Do I have your commitment that you guys want to be the best EAs in the world? Right? And no shame if you just want to be a good EA. That's okay too. It's okay too, but your spot will get taken by the best EAs in the world. Just a honest warning there, right? And if you guys are committed to being the best, we're gonna show you guys how, right? But you guys need to do the work. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great, amazing, best week left of your week there, and I'll see you guys in the next call.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.